The Angels offense has been, well, let's be honest, offensive, but it might not be who the manager or the hitting coach is. It could be a Perry Minasian problem, and we're going to tell you why.
You are Locked On Angels, your daily Los Angeles Angels podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thanks for making Locked On Angels your first listen of the day. We're diving into the Angels' offensive numbers and demonstrating why their issues, they may be more organizational. It might be an organizational philosophy problem rather than a hitting coach problem. So to start, we're going to set the baseline and give you a look at the offense and how it looked before Perry Minasian. Then we're going to share with you the stat transformation of the Angels under GNPM. And then finally, we're going to interpret the why, what the data suggests about Minassian's philosophy and the front office identity. Before we get to that, I want to thank our sponsor, FanDuel. Right now, new customers can bet $5, and if your bet wins, you're going to get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. So download the FanDuel app today.
Thanks for being here for this episode of Locked On Angels, where it's your team every day. You've got the Frisch Brothers here with you, a.k.a. the Super Halo Bros. My name is John, and that's my brother Mike.
And my name is Mike, and that's my brother John.
Hey, we've been talking Angels baseball with you for the last 4 seasons here on Locked On Angels, and we're happy to be here Monday through Friday talking about our favorite team. We got an interesting discussion today, don't we, Mike?
Yeah, you nerded out.
I most certainly did.
With the Angels' offensive stats. You went from 2019 to 2025. I feel like I need to say, Happy learned how to putt. John nerded out.
That's right.
You went and did a deep dive, didn't you?
I certainly did. So buckle up, nerds. I'm going to have a companion piece on our Super Halo Bros Substack. That link is in the episode description. I'll have that up at some point today, if not already, because I want you to see the data for yourself if you want to do a deeper dive on everything we're about to talk about for today, Mike.
Yeah, and the reason this conversation came up is because Johnny had an interesting conversation with someone on Angels Reddit. Now, usually Angels Reddit or Reddit in general can get a little crazy, but this actually was a beneficial conversation, wasn't it?
No, I always love being on Angels Reddit. It's super fun. Yeah, a user by the name of Certain Judgment, a scary name, so I'm going to call him CJ. CJ brought something to my attention that I don't think you and I have considered before, Mike, and it all kind of stemmed from our issues with Johnny Washington, the hitting coach. Remember, we were wanting to fire him at the beginning of this season, and the results indicate that probably he should be, but also there's something here that I think is going to make our anger misplaced. And here's what I mean. It led me down a rabbit hole, this conversation with CJ, and I'm trying to grasp the issues of the Angels and see if it's bigger than whoever's their hitting coach, whoever's managing them. So today, we're going to tell you why the Angels offense might be a Perry Minasian problem.
Yeah. So let's start with Perry Minasian, and maybe before Perry Minasian got here, before he came in, right? The Angels, they weren't exactly elite. I think we complained a lot about their offensive numbers before he came in. They were a disciplined offense. They had contact heavy, top 10 in walks kind of offense. They were bottom 5 in strikeouts. Boy, we shouldn't have complained at all. It wasn't flashy, but I guess we could say it was functional, right, John?
Yeah, under hitting coach Jeremy Reed, remember him from 2019 to 2022. He was the Angels hitting coach, came up from the Angels minor league system. Here's what the Angels posted. They had a weighted runs created plus of 96 in 2019 and 106 in 2020. That means they were around league average, maybe a little bit better, maybe a little bit worse. Their on-base percentage, Mike, was in the top half of MLB. 324, good for 14th in 2019, and then 332, good for 9th in 2020. They had low strikeout rates, about 20 to 21%, top 5 in the fewest number of strikeouts in baseball.
Wow.
In 2019, they struck out the 3rd fewest out of 30 teams with a 20.4% K rate. In 2020, they struck out the 5th fewest times out of all 30 teams with a 21.2% K rate. And then, Mike, here's another thing. They had strong walk rates around the top 10%, or around 10% walk rates, top 10 in Major League Baseball. 2019, they were 7th with a 9.4% walk rate. 2020, they were 6th in walk rate at 10.4%.
Now, just for the record, to remind our listeners, and they know this, but just to keep it fresh on our minds, that 2020 season was an only 60-game season,
Right.
and the Angels had losing records in 2019 and 2020. But the 2020 team actually ranked in the top 10 in nearly every plate discipline stat. Their problem wasn't offense. Their problem was run prevention. 2019, the team ERA was 5.12, 25th in Major League Baseball. They had an ERA plus of 91, which was 26th in baseball. And then 2020, they had a team ERA of 5.09, which was 26th in baseball, and an ERA plus of 90, which was 24th in baseball. John, it's why anytime the Angels would sign somebody, fans from 2018, 2019, 2020 would go, well, can he pitch?
Oh, it went back before that. That's for sure.
Yeah, but we didn't have any pitchers at that time. And so that's why the Angels really, really struggled. It wasn't really an offensive problem. It was really a pitching problem for them in 2019 and in 2020.
So looking at those numbers, Mike, thinking again about how good their on-base percentage, low strikeouts, good walk rate, WRC plus, again, 100 is league average, so they were around that. ERA plus was about 10% under league average in terms of pitching. Again, they ranked toward the bottom of MLB. This question's for you. Is there a chance that maybe if the Angels had some better pitching in 2019 and 2020, they could have, I don't know, had at least winning records? Because how crazy is it that the Angels at one point had the third fewest strikeouts and top 10 walk rate compared to the worst team in baseball with the most strikeouts in their, in the league this year, second in franchise history. Like, this is crazy, isn't it?
Yeah, and this is why Billy Epler went and got Shohei Ohtani, because they needed pitching, and Shohei was going to be that guy, but he was hurt. He wasn't able to play, at least on the mound. He did hit a little bit in 2018, 2019, 2020, obviously was out completely, and then when he got back, just was not himself. And then it was 2021 when he became the Shohei that we know and that we love. Well, some of us love right now. And that's why they went and got him, right? But every other guy that they got was not a great pitcher. They didn't go and get pitchers at all during that time.
You mean Trevor Cahill as the opening day starter in 2019? That wasn't good enough?
Can you believe? No wonder they lost 90 games that season. Like, Trevor Cahill is your opening day starter. Again,
and Matt Harvey, we're counting on a bounce back season from the Dark Knight, right?
Well, and that's the thing that I think has been the most frustrating, is that we've seen the Angels do this retread thing. So it's nice to have some of these younger pitchers. It's also nice to have some of these younger players on the roster right now. It just feels like they just can't get it right when they need to get it right. It's either they've got this right, but that wrong. And then when they get that right, they get this wrong, right? Yeah. And that's what this feels like in 2019, 2020. It's wild to me to look at those stats and then go, I remember you and I, we didn't have a show at that time, didn't start Super Halo Bros until the 2020 season. You and I had a lot of conversations about, well, get some pitchers, and this team actually could produce. This team could actually be pretty good. Albert was still putting up good numbers. 2019 was Mike Trout's MVP year. So this is a team that could do really well. And the fact that they didn't go and get pitching is remarkable, John. It's just fascinating that they missed out on that.
Yeah. Zach Wheeler and Billy Epler are going to have a conversation, and already said, nope, turn that plane around, come talk to Anthony Rendon. And we all know how that worked out. But having heard those numbers, there's a couple of takeaways here. When it comes to Jeremy Reed, his philosophy, at least by the numbers, seems to focus on situational hitting, getting guys on base, line drive, gap power, that sort of thing. Stuff that we're missing these days. And we know that guys are capable of it. But think about the David Fletchers, the Tommy LaStellas, maybe even early era Ohtani, right? He wasn't, hitting for a ton of power, but he was hitting some nice gap to gap stuff.
Yeah.
He's striking out about the same as he does now. But here's the thing. This wasn't the kind of offense that, you get all the red lines on StatCast, but it was built around consistency in their at-bats, putting pressure on the defense, the pitcher on the mound. In a weird way, they kind of had an identity, Mike. They made contact, they got on base, and they gave Trout and Ohtani and Pujols, guys like that, a chance to do some damage. And then, prior to 2021, Perry Minasian comes in and takes over as the GM, and the Angels offense their DNA starts to look a little bit different. We're going to tell you more about that in just a second, but we want to thank you for making Locked On Angels your first listen of the day. Coming up, how do things change once Perry Minasian gets here? What does the organizational philosophy become according to the numbers and the emphasis that is placed on the hitters at the plate? We're going to get into all of that coming right up.
The NFL season is here, and FanDuel has an offer that you don't want to miss out on. Right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $300 in bonus bets. If your $5 bet wins, you can just put down $5. And if it hits, you get to unlock $300 in bonus bets to use across the FanDuel app. And I love how FanDuel gives you any opportunity to play. You can build parlays, you can try player props, you can even follow the game live as they're unfolding and make bets in that moment. Whether you're a casual fan or you love diving into the stats, FanDuel makes the game day experience so much better. So don't wait any longer. Visit FanDuel.com to download the FanDuel app today and get started.
This is the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every day. Thanks for making Locked On Angels your first listen of the day. Of course, you can listen to us wherever you get your podcasts. You can watch us on YouTube or your smart TV. We're always there for you if you want to see our smiling faces. But the biggest thing is, whether you're watching or listening, come on over to YouTube, get in the conversation by getting in the comment section and hitting that subscribe button, because it really helps us out. Hey, and if you want to continue the conversation, hit us up on social media at Locked On Angels, at Super Halo Bros. We'd love to reach you there as well.
All right, so we've discussed what the Angels offense looked like prior to GMPM and his arrival in 2021. But from 2021 onward, there's a dramatic shift in the Angels' offensive approach. They start swinging harder, they start missing more, and they start walking less. And the stats and the numbers, they tell a pretty clear story. The power goes up and the contact goes down. And no matter who's in charge, this has been a pretty consistent theme after Perry Minasian arrived as the general manager.
Yeah, even with Jeremy Reed as the hitting coach in 2021 and 2022. But here's the thing. Let's take a look at some stats from over that period. The weighted runs created plus drops from 106 in 2020 to 92, and it's kind of been hovering around there for a few years. And remember, weighted runs created plus is important because it's kind of a catch-all number in terms of offensive production, where, again, 100 is league average, and the Halos go from floating around, a little bit above, a little bit below, and now they're just about 10% below that each and every season. The on-base percentage, Mike, it goes from 332 in 2020, which was 9th in Major League Baseball, to 297 in 2022, where the Angels rank 26th in baseball that year. And then even in 2025, the Angels on-base percentage, just 298, which was 28th this year in the league. And then here's the kicker. The strikeout percentage, it goes from 21% to 26%. That's from 5th best in Major League Baseball to last place.
Wow.
The 30th worst on-base percentage. And then the walk rate falls about 10% to 7.5%. Meanwhile, the home runs kind of hold steady. They're about the same. They do peak in 2023 and 2025. And, that's also boosted by the fact that Mike Trout had a healthy season relatively in 2023. And, of course, Ohtani had another MVP season at the plate that year. So they had a little bit of a boost. And then, of course, in 2025, we all know the emphasis was placed on hitting that home run ball.
Yeah. So what does all of this mean? Well, a couple things. Perry Minasian's version of the Angels, it's to chase power. They want to chase exit velo, they want launch angle, they want home run potential, all at the expense of plate discipline. And here's how we know this. Think of the players that Perry has gone after to fit that model. Jared Walsh, Taylor Ward, Brandon Drury, Joe Adell, Hunter Renfroe, Mickey Moniak.
Yeah.
These are players with above average power, but high K rates.
I would even say Soler.
Yep.
Mickey Moniak, I think, currently falls into that category as well. Unfortunately, Trout also fell into that category this season because a lot of strikeouts, but a lot of power when he made contact with the ball. So
yeah,
that's the thing, is those guys were more power centric, not patience, not contact, right? And when you think about some of the guys that they had before, like even if Jeremy Reed preached plate discipline like he was prior to Perry coming in, the thing is that the roster composition really limited his ability to teach guys to be patient at the plate because of the kinds of guys that were there. Like, even though you can teach it, guys like Jared Walsh, Drew Reed, Joe Adell, like they all have to learn it, but they're just not that kind of player. Think about this for a second. Andrelton Simmons is a great example of someone who fits the mold of who the Angels had before. Oh, from 2016 to 2019, he had an average strikeout rate of 8.6%. Tommy La Stella had an 8.7% strikeout rate in 2019. And then before he got traded in 2020, a 6% strikeout rate. So again, even if Jeremy Reed in 21 and 22 was teaching guys like, guys, you got to be patient, guys, you got to make contact, types of players on the team just didn't fit that mold.
Yeah, and it is also worth noting that when Minasian eventually replaced Jeremy Reed with Marcus Thames in 2023, the team doubled down on power. Tim's background with the Yankees, with the Dodgers, is rooted in launch angle and damage contact, not contact for its own sake. In 2023, the home runs spiked, 231 home runs, which was fifth in baseball that season. But then came the high Ks, and that fit the blueprint, right? So the change wasn't likely Reed was failing as a hitting coach, but Minasian realigning the coaching staff with what we believe is his offensive philosophy.
Right. So despite the changes, in 2023 is a perfect example of the results. Mike, they were fifth in home runs that year, but they were 24th in weighted runs created plus, meaning that they were well below league average in terms of creating runs and creating situations where they could score runs, basically not getting the job done despite, all the power that they were putting up. Mike, they had 73 wins in 2023. Now, I want to caveat something. I understand there were injuries in 2023 and there was the trade deadline where they tried to get guys to help him out and it all just kind of fell apart, right? That's important. I think another caveat here is to say over the last couple of years, the league has chased more power. The league has chased more home runs. So it's not just exclusively an Angels thing, but I think what sets them apart is this. When you're 24th in weighted runs created plus, even though you're doing the same thing as everybody else, chasing home runs, striking out a whole lot more, you're still behind the pack, right? Even though everybody's trending in the same direction, you're trending in the same direction at the back of the line. And I think that's why we need to hone in on that WRC plus, because even though the league is trending a certain way, the Angels are still not hitting league average. They're still under that. So despite everybody kind of following that philosophy of chasing power and hard hit percentage and all that stuff, the Angels still aren't very good at it. So Mike, I got a question for you. Am I getting somewhere with this? Have I opened your eyes to something that you and I may not have seen before, may not have discussed before regarding Perry Minasian and Johnny Wash and Marcus Thames and all that stuff? What do you think?
John, here's what this tells me. This makes perfect sense why Perry Minasian would say, well, we just struggle with consistency and injuries have really hurt us, because here's his strategy. This is his philosophy.
Yeah.
He just never talked about it. He never shared it out loud. He's never told us that this is what he's doing. There's never been any communication about this. Now, we see it unfolding, and when we see the numbers, we're like, oh, yeah, that's exactly what he was doing. But you made a good point. All of the league moved in this direction. The problem is that the Angels sucked at moving in this direction, and they were the worst of everybody moving in this direction. So yeah, he's got a strategy. He's got a philosophy. The problem is that he wasn't good at creating a team to help make this strategy effective and for them to win on the field. And so there was not a performance-based strategy. It was the league's doing this. The numbers say we should do this. So let's go along with it. So as I see the numbers in front of me, it now makes sense when I hear Perry Minasian talk about this team and why things didn't work and all of that. And maybe even why, John, this is a guess, but maybe even why he doesn't necessarily address or admit or acknowledge where things have gone wrong in the past. And maybe it's because he's confused as to why, because I did what all of baseball's doing. I'm following that philosophy. I'm bringing in more power and more launch angle and more analytics and more this and more that. And I'm just not sure why it's not working. And so I think that might be a glimpse. These numbers give us a glimpse as to where Perry's head is at. Problem is that he just never communicates any of this stuff to us and shares any of this stuff, whether it be in simple ways or in very deep ways, maybe more simple ways if he's going to do a press conference. But yeah, you are getting somewhere. These are things that we haven't considered. And it looks like a philosophy. It looks like a strategy. Problem is that he's moved with the league. He's just not really good at moving with the league.
Yeah. And the other part of this is you know us very well. I'm talking to our everydayers. There is something to be said about, the way the Angels can attack the ball, and when they make contact, they can do some damage. But it's the fact that they're not making contact, I think, is the issue. We'll talk about that a little bit later on, but you hit it on the head, Mike. Everybody's trending in a certain direction. And yeah, there's exceptions, right? I think the Brewers this year are an exception to that. They're not a home run hitting team, even though they put up 7 on the Cubs via the home run the other night, right? But what I mean to say is this, in general, and you can see the trends and the graphs and whatnot, everybody's kind of trending in that same direction. The problem is the balance of power and contact that the Angels don't have right now. You used to have contact, and you had some power too, right? You had a good mix of Simmons and Tommy La Stella, but then you also had Mike Trout and Albert Pujols and Shohei Ohtani to some extent. David Fletcher's another one, right?
Yeah.
I know he was kind of a one-trick pony, but at the very least, he was always making contact and not striking out so much. And so there seems to be a big philosophy change. Now, we're going to get into what this says about Perry, and we'll get into that in just a minute.
Guys, you probably heard of Viagra or Cialis. Maybe you've even tried them, but if you're looking for something beyond the usual pill, it's time to meet Rougiette Go Long. This isn't just another ED pill. It's a total game changer for confidence. Go Long combines 2 doctor-trusted medications in one dual-action formula. The effects can last up to 36 hours. That's confidence all day, all night, and even into the next day. And the process is really simple. Connect with a board-certified doctor. It's 100% online. And if prescribed, your treatment ships discreetly right to your front door. So if you're ready to level up your confidence in the bedroom, head to Rougiette.com and use our promo code LOCKEDONMLB for 15% off your first order. That's Rougiette, RUGIET.com. Use our promo code LOCKEDONMLB to make sure that they know that you came from Locked On Angels.
Rougiette Go Long. I see what they did there. All right, Mike. So when you see this offensive profile change this drastically, like when you see the before and after, it's not a coincidence. It's culture. Mm-hmm. And this tells us what Perry Minasian values. And to be fair, we now have a 5-season sample size.
Yeah.
Which I don't think we could have had this conversation even last year. I think that we would need to, let things play out a little bit more. But now we have 5 years of Perry Minasian data versus what came before him. So there's a couple things that we want our fans and listeners and everydayers to consider when it comes to Perry Minasian, aren't there?
Yeah, Minasian came from Atlanta, where power and exit velo were key metrics to evaluate players. So, of course, that's going to be part of his makeup, part of his philosophy. The Angels have taken on that identity. They really have. And we hear that all the time, don't we? Like on the broadcast, exit velo, launch angle, home run distance, guys on base, pitcher on the ropes. And then you'll hear Gooby or you hear Wayne, man, if he can get a hold of one here, change the entire game, hits a home run, right? And that was every moment. They're down by 9. If he can get a hold of one here, right? And that was the philosophy, even from the broadcast standpoint. They're communicating what they've seen the team really strategize and do. The hiring of Marcus Timms, he was the first hitting coach that Perry was able to hire and bring here. He came from the Yankees and the Dodgers. And then Johnny Wash fits that same philosophy as well. It makes sense now why he brought those 2 guys in and why he brought Washington in as recent as he did. Now, the offense became more in tune with the vision of the front office, but John, the results, record weighted runs created plus. They didn't improve, meaning the strategy didn't fix the team's underlining balance of issues, right?
Yeah, exactly. Like we were saying, you have a bunch of heavy hitters, but you don't have the on-base guys to go with it. So here's the thing that the Angels became. A team that emphasized like all or nothing. They can have a bunch of hot stretches, and when they hit the ball really well and it flies out of the yard, they look great. And that's a lot of what they were doing at certain points this season. But then you get long slumps of none of that for a while. And then another thing that we've seen trending in the wrong direction is the lack of discipline. Their walk rate falls from around 10% to 7.5%. I know that doesn't sound like a lot, but in baseball terms, that is a lot. But when the walk rate falls, that means you're not having as good quality at bats. That means you're doing the boom or bust, all or nothing, 3 true outcomes kind of thing. And then they become more inconsistent, Mike. Even though 2023 and 2025, they hit a lot of home runs, doesn't translate to wins because the lineup couldn't sustain those rallies. You couldn't keep the momentum going. You and I have often said, actually, no, you have often said, I will take a double into the gap over a 3-run home run, because that means there's still guys on base. That means the pressure is still on the pitcher. That means the next guy can still do some damage. The 3-run home run is great, especially when you need it. But at the same time, you clear the bases, you reset, and the pitcher on the mound can get back to what they were doing well. And so, even though they had all this power, didn't really amount to much, did it, Mike?
No, didn't at all. And this combination of power without on-base ability, it's attractive, right? For individual stat lines. I mean, I've said on this show a couple of times, like Johnny Washington can make the back of your baseball card look really good. You know, you're going to look at Taylor Ward's stats from 2025, and you're going to go, man, what a year. Batting average a little bit low, but look at, man, he really jumped up from year to year. Look what he did.
How did he do in the playoffs when the Angels got that?
Same thing with Joe Adell, John. You can say that about Joe Adell, and you can go, he really jumped up year to year, like 20 home runs, and then 37 home runs? Like that's incredible. Almost 100 RBIs. Like Johnny Wash is going to make these guys back of their baseball card look really good. Their arbitration numbers are going to be really good. Their free agent numbers are going to be really good, because you're getting a really good hitter when he's working under the philosophy of Perry Minasian and what Johnny Washington is trying to achieve.
Yeah, I just don't think it's a coincidence that you have a Johnny Wash, you have a Marcus Timms, you have the results you got with Jeremy Reed, despite what Jeremy Reed had done prior. So having had all this conversation, Mike, what does it tell us about Perry Minasian's philosophy when it comes to the offense? Well, it says that he believes in power metrics, and in theory, that's fine, but the Angels were never built to have balance in their lineup. There's no plate discipline. There's no contact hitters who complement the sluggers. And so when you think about prioritizing how hard you can hit the ball and exit velocity and launch angle, that's what he's been following. But implementing that and a roster that he needs to execute with that, it's been very uneven. He's emphasized a lot of power, but he hasn't balanced it with guys who have good plate discipline, a lot of contact skills. This is why we like Nolan Shawnuel.
Yeah.
This is why we like him. We don't need him to sell out for power. I know everybody says power hitting first baseman, lefty, where is he? Look, we got enough of those guys on this team. So let Nolan hit it into the gap. Let Nolan take his walks. Let Nolan not strike out. Let Nolan hit a bloop single between center field and second base and stretch it to a double. You know what I'm saying? And so that's the thing is when you have such a dramatic change in the way things were to the way things have been the last 5 years, no matter who's in charge, such a big swing indicates an organizational shift in philosophy. And it's not the coaching, it's not the manager, it's an overall issue with the Angels organization. And here's a final point that I'll make. The expected weighted on base average when the Angels make contact was one of the tops in Major League Baseball this year. What that means is when they make contact, they're very likely to get on base. It's very likely to be a hit. And then the Angels do damage and they hit the ball very well. But the key ingredient to that whole equation is contact.
When they make contact.
When they make contact.
Yeah.
And so sometimes these guys, you got to sell out for some power in order to make contact. So, that's a give or take. But Mike, my question to you before we finish this discussion, is it Johnny Washington's fault, or maybe he's just doing the job that he's been told to do? What do you say?
Well, I think it's easy to go, well, yeah, obviously it's Perry Minasian's philosophy, and so maybe it's not Johnny Washington's fault. But remember, when he was the hitting coach in 2019 for the Padres, they were a different version of the Angels, struck out a lot, went after a lot of power.
But that's
right?
my thing, though. Like, Perry hired him to do that here. That's what I think the issue is.
So I think that Johnny and his philosophy aligned with Perry and his philosophy.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know if you can blame or put fault on anyone. I think you could just say, oh, the numbers say this is the philosophy. I think it's terrible because it hasn't helped us do anything. But I think that the argument back, if they were to argue back with us, is they could say, well, when we had Jeremy Reed and a different philosophy, it was terrible and we didn't do anything. To which then the conversation comes down to, well, that's on you for not getting the players who are the best at that philosophy and that strategy to make this happen.
Well, and also the pitching. I mean, the pitching was just terrible. Like, you think about how many more wins they might have during that era of, good contact guys, walking a lot, all that stuff. It really comes down to some of the worst pitching this team has ever had. An overall ERA in the 5s in 2019 and 2020. Like, give me a break, man. And so that's why, like you said earlier, everybody was screaming for pitching. And don't get me wrong, we still need good pitching, but look at what they had in 2022, Mike, an ERA of about 3.77.
Mm-hmm.
And that was Detmer's best year. That was Sandoval's best year. Or I'm sorry, maybe that was 2022, but it was their best years, and still couldn't make heads or tails of doing anything with this approach at the plate. So really, and now that we have this 5 years of data, and CJ brought this up to our attention, I think that this is just proof that this is a Perry Minasian philosophy, and no matter who's in charge, it always comes back to launch angle, do damage. Don't be patient. Don't make contact, right? Like, sell out for power.
Get a hold of one right now, then we would be down.
Exactly.
Thanks for making Locked On Angels your first listen of the day. Now for your next listen, check out Locked On MLB Game Night. Every game, every night until the World Series champion is crowned. You can find Game Night on the Locked On MLB YouTube channel or wherever you get your podcasts.
Hey, be sure you give us a follow again on Twitter at Locked On Angels and at Super Halo Bros on Twitter and Instagram. Don't forget, we're grading the roster. It's a roster report card. We're getting into that soon. Head into the link in the episode description, whether you're watching or listening. Fill out a quick Google survey, rate and review the players, give them a grade for the season. We're going to compile all that and have that for you soon on Locked On Angels. But Mike, in the meantime, what do we have on deck for Thursday's show?
Well, this got me thinking, if we think about the roster and potential managers, would Albert's style of managing fit the current Halo roster as constructed? We're going to talk about that tomorrow on Locked On Angels.
All right, looking forward to that conversation. We hope you enjoyed this one. Come back and join us tomorrow. Until then, my name is John, and that's my brother Mike.
And my name is Mike, and that's my brother John.
Thanks for being here with us, everybody, and we'll see you back here on Thursday. Mike's coughing. He doesn't have a point.